place again. My usual commissive, friends, family, and community. And my journey to Kingston, capital of Jamaica, starts. But before we get there, my journey to Kingston started from when we were pretty young. So remember now, one of the big things we used to look forward to outside of the holidays like Easter and Independence and Christmas and birthdays and so on. Well, not even birthdays, but Independence and Christmas was taking the excursions, whether it was church or school, to a number of places throughout Jamaica. Because it was through these excursions that as children, we kind of understood a little bit more about our country. So whether it was the topography, whether it was the industries, whether it was the culture or the food or the dance or whatever, it was through some of these excursions that we would take, many of which would take us to the capital, Kingston. I remember clearly as a youth at infant school, one of my first journeys into Kingston was we went to Ward Theatre. Now, Ward Theatre, for all of you know, was the epicenter of the great plays, pantomime being the greatest of them all, with Louis Bennett and Uncle Ran and so on. Now, as children, when you go and travel, back in the day, you have a chaperone, and you have teachers and staff and so on. But my mother would ensure that she would take me to the bus, like many other parents would. But I don't know where them get this thing from and stuff your chest with newspaper to prevent you from getting sick. Because back in the day, the floor at the bus, the country bus, whether it's Victor bus, Mail bus, Mr. Chin, Mr. Hall bus, or whichever bus, it's floorboard them used to use, board for the floors, and they used to use ox dye. And when I mix the ox dye with the diesel oil, it was a very noxious combination that made many of us sick, combined with the fact that the journey was torturous by virtue of the corners and the bad road and so on. So many of us, before we even get halfway down the road, we were, doing what? So our journey would take us into Kingston. And just be mindful of the fact that we're not just living in the past. What I want to remind you is that we're just reminiscing. Because remember now, Jamaica in the 60s and the 70s, we were making pretty much everything, from car tire to ice cement. Yeah, man. And many of the trips you would take would be eye-openers for children, whether it was in primary school, infant school, or even high school, was for us to understand the industries that kept the wheels of our country running. So when it was the tire factory, the Goodyear tire factory out at Morant Bay, our Lannerman Sweetie factory, our D&G, our people who used to make Jealousy windows, our Berwick battery, or when we saw Fanta, there were numerous expositions to what we would learn about our country. Yeah, man. And then we would have the cultural exposition. So we would do the War Theatre, we would do the Jamaica House, which give us an exposition of politics, whether it's Garden House, Jamaica House. I would also understand that we would also go to the zoo, 90% of which were in Kingston. So this is, in fact, the way we got initial exposure to what Kingston was all about. Because remember now, no matter where you are in the world, and you say, well, you're a Jamaican, and a man say, where you come from in Jamaica? And you say, well, it's Portland we come from. Remember now, back in the day, before we all get so culturalized, most people used to just believe, say, well, if you come from Jamaica, it's right under the clock of half you come from. Until people start realizing, no, man, we have to embrace what is good and true about us as Jamaicans. So from the east to the west, the north to the south, more and more people start to embrace where they come from. Understanding well enough that Kingston was the epicenter of most activities. These are all activities except for tourism. And Portland, where we come from, had a little snippet of the tourism, more Coach Rails and Runaway Bay, Discovery Bay, Montego Bay, Negril, and so on. Now, the entire country. Because you have Airbnb in Kingston, you have big hotels on the north coast, you have big hotels on the south coast. But going back to the question of going to Kingston, Kingston was like a journey that a lot of us as kids look forward to. I used to go to Kingston every now and then with my brother to Sabina Park to watch cricket matches and so on, or Kensington Park, Kensington Oval, Kensington Park was called. But our trips to Kingston at that time was just like every now and then when you go, you'll probably stop at the McDonald's or half a tree roll and get a burger. That was your big thing. I remember now the name McDonald's wasn't introduced into Jamaica until much later on. So I guess they ended up having a fight. But that was a big thing for us as kids. Again, Kingston being the epicenter. All you knew about what was great and powerful about Jamaica was Kingston. So when it was colleges, when it was government, when it was food, not really food, but more like the cultural exposition, like dance and poetry and, you know, poetry and artists and all and things, everybody was centered around Kingston. It was only towards the middle 70s and towards the end of the 70s where more and more Jamaicans started to embrace much more about their countrified life. And we are from a nice, beautiful, idyllic little town called Port Antonio, which is a kind of a microcosm of what rural Jamaica is. So towns like Morant Bay, Port Antonio, Port Maria, and so on and so forth, Ocherios and so, represented what would be called rural Jamaica. But remember now, you still had sub-rural, no disrespect. You still had parts of Portland where people come to Port Antonio only on a Saturday, so them can get the special items, so them need at the market or the supermarket, yeah, or them come a bar or whatever. So as a child, our big exposure to the city was through the excursions that we used to take. And these were things that we looked forward to. Many times we tried to cover as much ground as we possibly could in the one day, because I remember there was only one day. So you go early, leave Port Antonio like 4 o'clock in the morning, by 6:30 you reach Kingston. And you start to the full bore from Spanish Town Road, come right up to Hope Zoo. And that for us was a big, big thing. By evening come, everybody tired. By the time you reach our junction, so you're coming back to junction, you're coming back, everybody fall asleep except for the adults. And as a matter of fact, a lot of these excursions were eye-openers for parents and teachers alike, because many of us never really went to Kingston for any reason. The people who used to go to Kingston used to just go to Kingston and bring back things for people in the rural areas. And it's reflective of rural life Jamaica. But for example, when you think of how people believe Jamaica is a small place, remember now, when you grew up in the country, you never really know anybody in Kingston unless you had family who moved to the city. If you grew up in the city, you never really know anybody who moved to the country, because people in there never went in that direction. It's only now when people start to have, you know, a different concept about life, you know, we'll have more and more people starting moving to rural areas. But as a child, one of the big things is you saw Kingston as just this metropolis that, you know, embraced everything that was about Jamaica. And you never really understood your little country town to be anything but just, you know, an appendage to the bigger cities like Montego Bay or Kingston. And you need that, and for that matter, like Mandeville, Spanish Town, and so on. Because even towns like Ocherios, Port Antonio, Port Maria, you know, Falmouth, as close as Falmouth was to Montego Bay, there was nothing much going on here. Towns like Black River, Maypen, you know, and so on. But as a child, our introduction to seeing what Kingston was kind of gave you an idea that at some point in time, some point in your life, you might end up going into Kingston. Many people I know never left Port Antonio to go to live in Kingston. But at some point in time, they went to Kingston, spent some time and came back home. Many left and never came back. So for that, my journey out of Port Antonio will start when, in the next segment, when I discuss my journey to start my whole new segment of my life. Parts of which, if it wasn't tragic, would be truly funny. And I remember specifically as I reminisce about like independence and independence celebrations and Christmas and so on. We used to play, you know, Crown and Anchor Man. Yeah. And, and the other day I went back to Port Antonio and ran into the Crown and Anchor Man there, and it reminded us how we as youths we used to feel like we sharp and we could have just tricked the corner and come on and we have a high school, so we have braids and everything. Yeah, man. Sheriff was his name. Tall, dark brother who had a nice personality. And he even reminded us that even when he used to win your money, he used to figure out a way how he could give back to the community. And as I speak of giving back, that is primarily the place where I'm at in my own life's journey, in the need for us to understand that while there might be a rear view mirror, there's also a windshield, and invariably the windshield is that much bigger than your rear view mirror. But it doesn't mean that you can glance in the rear view mirror every now and then, but you must also look ahead, because the journey ahead is how you're going to, create your own life and make your space meaningful. But when you glance in your rear view mirror, it gives you a perspective on which you can understand that, hey, at some point in my life, giving back starts with giving. And for that, I want to say, whether it's Buff Bay or not, Bay, St. Margaret's Bay, Oak Bay, Port Antonio, Banga Ridge, Swift River, Long Bay, Mansion Hill, Rio Grande Valley, Wayne Road, Radiator Road, French Avenue, Smart Road, wherever it is you're from, rural Jamaica, just remember that your life's foundation means something. And whatever it means to you in a positive space, try and figure out a way how we can give back. Walk good and take it easy. Good to go. All right, Joel, good.